Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, February 5th, 2018. My name is Michael Brooks, and I'm Michael Monday, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. Majority Report! We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Alyona Minkovski, host at Salon.com. We're talking about the Nothing Burger Nunes memo, the very full burger that is the national security state, how it violates all of our civil liberties, and why no one seems to take it seriously. Not the hashtag resistance, certainly not the Trump administration, which is empowering it when it's not building conspiracy theories about it. All that and more with Alyona Minkovski. Plus, the United States is ratcheting up its nuclear arsenal. They are back in the game in a big way. President Rouhani of Iran says that they are threatening Russia. Paul Ryan has some amazing brags on Twitter about what his regressive, cruel, top-end weighted tax cuts do for normal workers. That tweet ended up deleted. And chemistry professor got his kids ready for school and then was arrested by ICE in front of them, even as a Holocaust denier is poised to claim the GOP nomination in a Republican race for Congress in Illinois. What a surprise. Chris Kluback is going to be Chris Kluback I'm going to represent myself. Chris Kluback is going to represent himself in a trial in Kansas. Is that a smart move? Trey Gowdy acknowledges that he was a lousy politician, but a good prosecutor.
Yeah, he's a bag man.
His wife doesn't like when he acknowledges that he was a mediocre bag man. And Donald Trump's response to a plea on guns. His pick for a UN migration post said that accepting Syrian refugees was foolish and delusional. And I'm only going to say this once. The Philadelphia Eagles beat the Patriots. Whatever.
All right.
Whatever. You literally can't win them all. So charity for Philadelphia. My only response to that is go on YouTube, type in Bill Burr, Philadelphia. Look at his performance about the city, and you will realize what my response is to the Phillies winning. Yeah, you can all go screw yourselves.
The era of the pajama boy is over.
It's the Eagles, not the Phillies.
The Eagles. Whatever. Same difference.
Yeah, Bill Burr got one over on us before, but now you're Dunkin' Donuts or Wawa's.
That's a disturbing. What's the difference between a Baltimore accent and a Philly accent?
That's some esoteric,
yeah.
I don't know, sociological study that has to be done on that.
Because it's definitely distinct, but super tight. I'm sorry. Yes, the Eagles beat the Pats. Whatever. I got nothing more.
On a Tom Brady fumble. Couldn't have happened in a more delicious way.
I guess his hydration plan isn't working.
Got to hold on to that ball like you held on to your son's lips on that kiss.
Ooh. Shots fired. I got nothing.
I'm a Jets fan, guys. This is sweet revenge in the worst way possible.
There's something in sports almost even it's not as satisfying, but watching your enemy fall, particularly in a nail biter fashion. Blowouts are never as satisfying.
I think the satisfaction lasts longer when it's someone's demise rather than your own team's success. Because then when it's your team, you think like, okay, we got to do something like halfway respectable next year.
Totally. I used to love. I'm not like I like football, but I'm more of a basketball tennis guy. But I remember a couple Super Bowls. What I would do is I would spend the first half at the gym because the gym is empty. So it's like a great time to be at the gym. And then I walk into the second half and I just be like, dude, how are the Pats doing? Are we about to win again? You freaking losers. And then we would. And that wouldn't have worked so well. I'm terrible, man. I go to Yankees games with Boschgar and root for the Yankees. I don't even have geographic loyalty. I just root for the most evil teams in sport. The teams that are most antithetical to my values.
Like you're accelerationist, but in sports.
Yeah, I'm a sports accelerationist, just not in real life because I understand the difference. Speaking of idiots, we got to play this clip of Don Jr. And we play this clip not to look, the clip speaks for itself. It's Fox News. It's the propaganda network. It's with Jesse Waters. It's staring into a deep, dark void of immorality and stupidity when these two talk. But there's something that Don Jr., like Wyatt Koch, he inadvertently does a lot to just lay bare the crisis of our modern society and of modern capitalism. Here is Don Jr. talking about the Democrats with Jesse Waters on Fox News. Warning, it will eat some of your brain cells.
What are they going to do in the midterms? Because a lot of Democrats are going to be running in districts that it was close with Hillary and Trump. So, they're going to have to try to play to the middle. Are they going to say we're against bonuses? Are they going to say we're against low unemployment? Are they going to say we're against rising paychecks and go along with Pelosi and Schumer? Or are they going to say, yeah, we recognize the economy's good. Here's how the Democratic Party can make it better?
I think they're going to go with the former only because they can't help themselves at this point. I mean, they're
going to lose if they do that.
That's great. I agree. But I think the problem is rather than being reasonable and coming to the table, they force themselves further and further and further left. I mean, they're left of commie right now. And that's a real problem for them because I don't think that's where America was. I think that's the lesson they learned from the election is, wait a minute, we need to be further radical left. And I don't think that's true. I think people want some moderation in their thought. And if
I want to say this, first of all. I am a big believer in a real universal left agenda. I do, however, agree with Junior. I don't think Americans are ready for left of comedy. As heartbreaking as that is for me, I think I think he nailed it on this one. More broadly, this clip brings to mind a condition that we here at the Majority Report would like to warn all of you about. It's called the rich, useless moron syndrome. And it is a condition produced by trust funds, way too much affluence, and completely disproportionate platforms to someone's talent and ability. It plagues much of America. And Don Jr., as you can see there, just by watching him think and talk, is just as much a victim of it as the rest of us are. So please, do something about reinstituting the estate tax and breaking up intergenerational wealth. Because if we don't, we will continue to be all harmed and threatened by that level of stupidity. Have you guys heard about Movement? There were 2 college dropouts that started their own watch company. And it really is. It's impressive. It's crazy how fast the company has grown. Now with almost 2 million watches sold in 160 plus countries, they continue to revolutionize fashion in the belief that style shouldn't break the bank. They have even doubled their number of watch styles and are now selling high-quality sunglasses and women's bracelets. And if you thought gift giving was all over for after Christmas, but now Valentine's Day is coming up, and our friends at Movement have put together the perfect interactive guide to make Valentine's shopping simple, shopping painless. Whether you're shopping for him or her, find everything from watches to fashion-forward bracelets and sunglasses in Movement's limited edition gift box, all curated by Movement's in-house stylists with their trendiest pieces that your special someone will love. Get 15% off today with free shipping and free returns by going to mvmt.com/majority. Go to mvmt.com/majority. Join the movement. Blue Apron is the leading meal delivery service in the U.S. It delivers fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients and step-by-step recipes that can be cooked in under 45 minutes right to your door. And while many people know about it, many don't know about the types of meals you eat when you cook with Blue Apron, like strip steaks with potatoes and spicy maple collard greens, a steakhouse-inspired favorite with delicious twist, chili-infused maple syrup. With incredible non-GMO ingredients and new chef-designed seasoned recipes every week, Blue Apron lets you see what the power of food can do. Every single Blue Apron meal I've had is absolutely delicious, and really, it makes cooking possible in a really busy life. I mean, that's really the bottom line. It makes delicious step-by-step meals for you. Blue Apron is treating Majority Report listeners to 30 off of your first order if you visit blueapron.com/majority. So check out this week's menu and get $30 off at blueapron.com/majority. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. And finally, but certainly not least, did you know that the average family visits 5 websites before booking a vacation rental? You can spend less time planning your next trip and more time relaxing with Tripping.com, the world's #1 site for vacation rentals. Whether you're looking for a cabin to get away for winter, planning your next beach vacation in Hawaii, or that vacation in Europe where you'll live like a local, Tripping.com can help you find the perfect place to stay. Vacation rentals offer flexibility, perks, and amenities that hotels don't, like multiple bedrooms, backyards, hot tubs, free Wi-Fi, and even fully stocked kitchens. So you can have a quick bite on the go or plan to cook your own meals. Great for families and large groups. With Tripping.com, one search lets you filter and compare and sort over 10 million available properties on trusted sites like VRBO, TripAdvisor, Booking.com, and more. Don't wonder if you're getting the best deal. You'll save an average of 18% per night by booking your vacation with Tripping.com. So don't forget, if you want to save time and money while booking the perfect vacation rental for your next trip, go to tripping.com/majority today. That's TRIPPING.com/majority. You can spend less time planning your next trip and more time relaxing with Tripping.com, the world's #1 site for vacation rentals, trusted by millions of travelers and featured by the New York Times, Travel and Leisure, Forbes, and more. Okay, everybody, we're going to take a brief break, and we will be right back with Alyona Minkovski. Welcome back to the Majority Report. Michael Brooks here. Joining us now is Alyona Minkovski of Salon.com, where she is a host and she's a regular on the Michael Brooks Show. Alyona, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today.
It's my pleasure. Always good to be talking with you. So, Alyona, I want to tease apart this conversation about the left and the American sort of national security state. I'm kind of burned out on the phrase deep state in the era of Trump. Before we get to that, let's touch briefly on this Nunes memo, really from whatever angle you want to take it from. I mean, I don't think there's much there in terms of the actual memo. Obviously, people in Trump's orbit, many Republicans are attempting to use it to quash this investigation. And maybe others in this sort of quote-unquote resistance are reacting to it in a way that is maybe a bit too kind of blindly trusting of institutions like the FBI, which is probably the broader thesis of our conversation. But first, I mean, what do you think? What's your kind of general read on this memo and how it's being reacted to?
Yeah, I mean, what seems to be crystal clear about the memo is the motivation behind releasing it. And, you've seen even in the responses from Donald Trump Jr., who said that it was kind of like a sweet revenge putting it out there.
That kid is really subtle. He really knows how to keep things under wraps.
I know. Like I really shouldn't be allowed to do television. And Trump claiming that it completely vindicates him. It's none of that is true. If anything, this memo just raises more questions than it does provide answers because it's only a couple of pages long. And so there's a lot potentially missing, from within it. And I do think, though, that it's telling, that Donald Trump is so focused, and maybe Republicans who are in support of him, on someone like Carter Page rather than, those who have actually been indicted, like a Paul Manafort. There's no fighting back or questioning or secret memos that would show that those parts of the investigation are invalid. So I just think that their whole argument really is kind of falling apart, and that was also shown by how many Republicans, including like Trey Gowdy, which, I never want to compliment Trey Gowdy, considering that he, ran a committee on investigating Benghazi for way, way longer than it should have existed and wasted so much taxpayer money and, and time, congressional time on doing something like that. But they also didn't back up the White House's stance that this is some memo that completely vindicates them, because it's just not true. And even this got renewed over 3 times in front of the FISA court. It doesn't at all explain away the rest of the investigation. It doesn't at all prove that the broader investigation was launched because of the Steele dossier. So it just doesn't do any of that. But to get to your larger point, what I have found the most frustrating is that there are some very real policy debates that deserve to be had and that we've kind of forgotten or moved on from, unfortunately, in the last couple of years, about national security. And, one of those is, of course, government surveillance. And this is what Devin Nunes and the Republicans pushing this memo have been kind of rallying against, is surveillance abuse by our intelligence agencies, which is a very real, very tangible, very
Hold on just one second.
thing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
hold on just one
sure.
second. I think you might have
Am I
moved
rambling?
or something. No, you're good. You just moved somewhere, so your reception got really bad. So I don't know what you got to adjust.
Oh.
Maybe just bring the phone closer to your mouth. I don't know, but you went. It sounded like you were submerged underwater, and I just want people to really clearly hear you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, now you're great. Wherever you are is right now
Okay.
is a lot, like significantly better. All right, go ahead.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Where do I start?
You were talking, I guess you can go back to where you were talking when it's fine. Just go back to, yes, they're identifying, and actually maybe we'll set the table a little bit. Okay, yes. So this memo basically doesn't address, charges against Manafort. It doesn't address the kind of the Papadopoulos thing. What it does is it sort of doubles down on this sort of bizarre guy, Carter Page, is in the clear. It doubles down on that this memo, the Steele dossier, was a political hit job. The validity of the Steele dossier, one way or another, like this investigation and whatever it is, does not really hinge on that, frankly. But they've certainly zeroed in on that. And now what you're saying, and of course this is, and maybe you could talk about the reauthorization that happened with a FISA court a couple of weeks ago in light of this, but that the Republican rhetoric and the Trump team's rhetoric is that they're identifying and harnessing the rhetoric of civil liberties, the rhetoric of national security state overreach, which is very real, for their own narrow political ends. But then maybe conversely, there's people in the sort of resistance or MIC resistance or whatever we want to call it, who, instead of disaggregating between the Trump team and, broader issues that are legitimate, are just sort of hinging their whole case on a blind faith in institutions that, of course, have abused public trust.
Yeah, well, and it's also just frustrating because, you heard the FBI warning that if this memo were to be released prior to its release, that it would do grave damage to national security. And I think we've gotten very used to, this kind of hyperbolic language from law enforcement, from intelligence agencies in this entire war on terror. And so, when a 3.5 or 4-page memo is actually released, it's pretty obvious. At least I haven't heard a single intelligence analyst or intelligence expert argue that did great damage to national security. And, and Democrats were very much kind of towing that same line, that this shouldn't be released for those purposes. And so then when this document is released, when it's clear that that threat or that risk that they were playing up doesn't actually apply to this document, it also discredits those arguments. And so you're sure there are very real national security threats that we should take seriously. But when you cry wolf about something like this, it makes people less inclined to actually believe it when the government says it. And so you have both Republicans and Democrats for, political convenience using either a national security or a civil liberties argument for kind of a farcical case where neither really apply. And I just think that overall that does a lot of damage to, the credibility of the government and to people's faith in institutions, which already is incredibly low at the moment. And so, if you're talking about the FISA reauthorization that just happened the other week, that was for Section 702, which is intended to collect information and communications on people overseas. But what happens then inadvertently is if they're communicating with somebody in the United States, then that American citizens or American residents' communications are also swept up. And Congress had the ability to put some kind of amendment in. There were people on both sides of the aisle who tried to put up a new law that would have created more protections for Americans' information, but that got voted down. And so ultimately, for 6 more years, FISA and this Section 702 power got reauthorized. Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, some of the leadership of the Democratic Party all voted for it. And so did Devin Nunes, the guy who wrote the freaking Nunes memo. It's so obvious that everyone is full of shit that I don't, and it's almost mind-blowing. And that, again, to me is one of the more kind of frustrating aspects of everything that has been going on. And just one more point about that, too, and the FISA reauthorization, because I interviewed some ACLU lawyers about this the other week when it was happening. What happens is they essentially then just put all of that information into their system, and then other agencies like the FBI just search through it in the way that a government lawyer actually himself claimed in front of a FISA court, akin to the way that Americans use Google search. Yeah. So that should freak you out.
Yeah.
Or at least,
no, it should absolutely freak you out, and it should also be, I think, put in part of a broader conversation of the administration's war on immigrants, and even setting aside the specific abuse, which is first and foremost with those, with communities that are targeted by these policies. When you start looking at, license plate info being shared across agencies as an example, and hiring private security contractors to help in that process. I mean, you look at these kind of parallel, sort of massive civil liberty abuse and overreaches by government agencies, and then actually parallel sort of like business interests essentially that help carry out these sort of programs and monitoring, and then that becomes another self-licking ice cream cone and business interest in Washington. And I think just really underlie that on both sides. And this to me is not, the hypocrisy thing is whatever. I'm totally, hypocrisy is hypocrisy.
We're used to that.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, who cares, right? That's old news. But let's run the parallel here. On one hand, the Trump administration is building a conspiracy theory matrix that does sound like it's out of, Alex Jones. It is actually, in fact, out of Alex Jones and Sean Hannity and comic books. And then on the same time, or sounds like it's from a comic book. Then at the same time, and, you talked about FISA, there's definitely other areas. It's giving policy-wise the national security state everything it wants, including more aggressive kinetic activity overseas with even less regard for civilian casualties than the Obama administration, which is another kind of piece that we could put into play here. And then, as you said before, the sort of resistance figures who, on one hand, it's like Trump is this sort of grossly reckless figure, which of course he is. We still are going to reauthorize all of these unique, massive executive powers, which were expanded under Bush and codified under Obama. So we have this double game going on, and the FISA thing was the perfect example of that, and also hilarious because Trump was, following his own logic and tweeting about, oh, this is really bad, we gotta, and then clearly somebody was like, oh my God, say it's been fixed on Fox, and then he was like, it's been fixed, it's great.
Yeah, that part was very confusing because I think it was within a matter of a couple of hours where he first, tweeted in opposition to the FISA reauthorization, and then clearly got like a call from, Paul Ryan or somebody. And then
probably like Bo Dietl. Forget Paul. Yeah, probably like the steak doctor on Fox News.
I mean, ultimately, though, this is, like you said, it's not surprising, but it's depressing. Mm-hmm. Considering where we were just a couple of years ago and what revelations, really came out thanks to Edward Snowden, mm-hmm. and the fact that this was, at least for a very brief moment in time, a part of the national discourse and the national debate, and it was, part of the public consciousness. It's unfortunate now that it's just kind of completely been swept under the rug and people have completely forgotten it again. And I think Democrats are very much responsible for this in a way where if they had wanted to champion these issues, they could have, but they don't want to, and that's ultimately what's at the root of this, is that the area where you always have bipartisan support is on areas of national security. And so, there are some civil libertarians in both parties who do champion these issues, but for the most part, our politicians don't care. For the most part, unfortunately, I think the public, I don't know if it's that they don't care or, there's just other stuff going on, and so you get easily distracted. But, to your point, too, even with, like, the Section 702, the companies, or not only Section 702, but in general, you have so many of these large tech companies, right, mm-hmm. Apple, Google, whoever, who are often handing over, to government requests information on their users and their data. And they're not out there vocally lobbying against renewing any of these policies or laws. And so I think that also just kind of shines a light on the way the industry interacts with and cooperates with the government here. And so no one has Americans' privacy rights, in line, unfortunately. But at least for the meantime, we have this kind of very obvious display that no one cares, because if you're so caught up and swept up in wanting to oppose Trump, then, then these kind of other glaring abuses and like we said, hypocrisies on the part of other political leaders like Democrats, are something that people are willing to let go or let slide.
That's true. And I don't, I think it's hard to find a sort of broad, rigorous assessment of the Obama administration, and I hit Obama a lot from the left. I also, I think obviously it's delusional to not admit that, yeah, of course I miss the guy being in office, relatively speaking, to either Trump or Bush. I think that's pretty obvious mm-hmm. to almost anybody. But at the same time, I do wonder, I mean, when Bush was doing this stuff, and we were first and, becoming aware of this stuff during Bush, it was terrifying because partially, because you associate it with, like, this is an administration that will lie about intelligence findings to facilitate an invasion. This is an administration that's playing with, that's engaging in torture and rendition. So, of course, if they're kind of aggressively violating people's civil liberties, that kind of fits with a whole pattern that's very disturbing. And then it wasn't just, I think that it was like that Obama policy-wise obviously codified and continued many of these Bush administration programs and was not in any way, was not protective of our civil liberties, just to put it simply. But maybe the real damage was this culture change where it does seem, and I think partially you're right, there's just so much that people are overwhelmed by, including, it's like, look, hey, maybe the FBI is violating my privacy in some indirect way, but if you're worrying about, housing, healthcare, job, I mean, obviously those things are extremely immediate. But I do think that there was also and this is where you're probably right, we have to focus on Democrats and Obama in particular, because the culture change of saying like, hey, this is a big deal that the NSA has all this data and there's no real governance model, or this is a real big deal that there's an obscure court that pretty much almost always sides, with government requests, and that people are tracking these in kind of just reams of data. It was the Obama brand that I think made it safer, quote unquote, safer in a lot of people's minds. And Trump, even Trump has not changed that, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah, and the truth is, it's always been a thing too, right? Whether before it was being tough on crime, then it turned into being tough on terrorism. Now I guess we're back to being, tough on MS-13 because that's where Donald Trump has decided to direct MS-13. Everyone's attention.
Right.
And and it's always just interesting to me, the kind of cognitive dissonance that people have between what currently is happening, what we're currently willing to accept, and the way that we look at American history. And the way that people obviously welcome any kind of disclosures of CIA documents, et cetera, right, that have not been made public for years. You had all the Kennedy papers that were released last year, or, even looking at the movie like The Post. We lionize these journalists, anybody who was out there fighting against government secrecy in the past. And I don't understand why we can't apply the same thing to what we're currently going through in our current moment.
Like it might be,
and that's why I was just going to take it back to this dumb waste of time memo debate that we're having at the moment, because that's what I really do think it is. It's a waste of time and a big distraction.
Yes.
Now you have the Democrats that want to release their memo, and people arguing that they shouldn't do it because then that gives them more political capital. And, it's like everything should just be out there. I'm always an advocate for the more transparency, the better, because then we can actually look at the facts and make decisions and judgments based on what we actually see in front of us, instead of allowing people to spin things for political convenience.
It's a final question. I mean, do you think that partially it would help if there was more, and there's a lot of really great national security reporting. There actually is, across a variety of outlets. And obviously, I mean, I look at it from a pretty left perspective, so I'm very skeptical of a lot of these, institutions' behaviors, particularly overseas, right? But I do wonder if it seems like, in spite of all the good reporting and all of the sort of work that's out there, in the public imagination, there's either like cartoonish evil that might have a good instinct but doesn't have any institutional understanding of how this stuff works, and therefore can be kind of easily dismissed. And then there's been a lot of effort, and I think even you see it in popular representations like Argo or Zero Dark 30, that this is this really serious and high-minded stuff. Like even if you're pulling people's fingernails out in Pakistan or something, it's like with a wary sigh. And that if there was maybe more just exposure to these people in these places just as normal bureaucracies and institutions, susceptible, with some of the same like positive attributes and really dangerous attributes of any other. It's just that in this case, instead of like, making a sneaker, they are dealing with all of our privacy and most basic liberties, and that there's nothing special or superhuman about these people. And I don't know like how that's conveyed to people, but it seems to me that somehow it needs to be normalized in order for there to be some type of rational conversation about it. I mean, I could be wrong, but that seems to be what's missing at some level.
Well, I'm with you there, right? Obviously, we romanticize those aspects. There's a lot of kind of propaganda that we are, dealt with all the time too. And, with all the utmost respect for people who serve this country, every time you want to watch a football game, you're also inundated with, military kind of rah-rah America content. And so it's everywhere. It's completely, seeped into our culture. And I don't know if there's a way to undo that. I guess the idea is that you hope that people just learn to think a little more critically, right? Because anytime people are whipped up into a kind of patriotic fervor, which people kind of fall back to patriotism as an excuse, I think, to criticize a lot of other ideas. We've seen this obviously with the Super Bowl, or sorry, not the Super Bowl, but in general with the NFL and Colin Kaepernick and kneeling in the flag. Or you're even seeing it now with this Memo conversation where you have people saying that they're resigning from the FBI, or how dare, Republicans in the Trump administration criticize the people who dedicate their lives to keeping our country safe. All of this should be up for criticism. All of these people were allowed to criticize them. And I think that that's the thing that we really need to kind of hammer in, is that is what makes this country unique. That is what our rights and I think our duty is as citizens, is to try to keep our government responsive to us and keep our government honest to us. And so, we don't need to worship these institutions. We don't need to worship the people who work for them. There are a lot of great people doing a lot of great work, but by no means does that make any of them, free from this ability for critique.
I could not agree more. Hopefully some of that instinct will get revitalized somehow in the public. Alyona Minkovski. Check her out, salon.com, many other places. Alyona, I always appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Okay, folks, that was Alyona. We're going to go to the fun half, 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. Tomorrow on the Michael Brooks Show, Felix Biederman from Chapo at Trap House is live in studio with me. We're comparing Obama impressions. We're talking about Bill Maher, a lot more stuff. I was recently indirectly attacked by one of the leading dum-dums on YouTube, so I'm going to need to respond to that tomorrow. I don't know if I need to. I choose to respond to it. Patreon.com/TMBS, and then Michael Brooks Show on iTunes and Michael Brooks Show on the Majority Report YouTube channel. Become a member of the Majority Report. That's how this show happens. Majority.fm/become a member. Check out justcoffee.coop. Use the coupon code Majority for the Majority Report blend and other fine offerings there. Jet.com. Use that kickback link. Spread the word. Leave us a review on iTunes. Like the Facebook page. All the different ways you can link up in the iTunes description of the show. You can find all of our Twitter handles. We will see you in the fun half.
You are in for it. All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Danerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck 'em. Almost says what?
Almost
says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total
Pussy.
Still good. It's very impressive work by the great DJ Danarchy. Work of genius. Let's get to some sound. Or actually, rather, let's get to a tweet. There's no reason why Paul Ryan should not be the most hated man in America. He is dedicated his entire public life to greatly increasing human suffering across the board. He's a bagman for America's oligarchy. And he achieved a dream, make no mistake, back in December when they passed that tax monstrosity, which is a massive redistribution of wealth to the 1% and to America's corporate sector. And that, along with gutting the safety net and other things, I'm sure, like, of course, doing away with environmental protections, just, the core goals. Sicker, dumber, poorer America. Paul Ryan, though, apparently he or his social media person, whoever is in control of his social media account, of his Twitter account, felt the need to do some bragging about the effect of his tax bill. And this is literally the best they could come up with because I guess unlike Trump, the guy just doesn't just make stuff up. So he was looking within the realm of reality of something he could say that this tax bill does for a normal person. So here is Paul Ryan. A secretary at a public high school in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, said she was pleasantly surprised that her pay went up by $1.50 a week, and she said she will more than cover her Costco membership for the year. Now, guys, I don't know if we looked up how much a Costco membership of the year for the year is. I doubt it's, what is it? What would that be, like $40? I doubt it's at the $40 price point. But that being said, I mean, $1.50, speaking anecdotally, like $1.50 is not even enough to get like no BS coffee in today's world. That's not even like a gas station cup of coffee. So while Wyatt Coke,
so it looks like a membership is $60, 1.5, $1.50 a week would be about $78.
Okay, so she can't cover the Costco. Okay, so cool. So she can.
So suck it, Michael.
So suck it. I stand corrected. We should have an entire tax code to benefit Wyatt Coke because this woman can join Costco. I actually would like to give her a lot more than a Costco membership. What were you going to say, Brendan?
I was just going to say she's almost then halfway to the executive Costco membership where other people can use your account.
That's exactly right. So if you're almost halfway to an executive Costco membership, and I just totally got owned because I was both wildly wrong in the math, which fits with the brand of this show because, of course, we're anti-math, and wrong about this specific anecdote, which I'm sure Paul Ryan savored. Why did Paul Ryan later delete the tweet after a barrage of criticism of people pointing out that the tax cuts are, of course, massively beneficial, not to the secretary in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, but to America's wealthiest? Well, it was probably also because, as Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii pointed out, the tweet about $150 a week is not a PR mistake. It's really what they think. Moments ago, at Paul Ryan, and then his opponent, Randy Bryce, was all over it. Moments ago, at Paul Ryan deleted this tweet after we told him how out of touch he was. Bryce wrote, soliciting a $1.50 donation. So, show Paul Ryan what you think of his tax bill. Randy Bryce went on to raise over $100,000, over $100,000 from donors who donated the $150 to his campaign. He is just shy of $1.3 million on hand and has spent $922,567 last quarter. Ryan has $9.6 million on hand, and critics have pointed out $500,000 in campaign donations from the conservative billionaire Koch family gave to Ryan shortly after the House passed the version of tax overhaul in November. Well, of course, that's who he works for. The Kochs were threatening to cut off funding for people like Brian because they weren't getting through the agenda of stripping away people's health care and giving the Kochs even more money. This is what they really think. And of course, it's totally acontextual. What are all the other ways are this secretary from PA going to have to pay to subsidize this giveaway to the American oligarchy? How is that going to show up in property taxes? How is that going to show up in longer work hours? How is that going to show up when things start? Health fees, funding for her school, cuts that will jeopardize her job. Who needs secretaries in the age of automation and tax and mass budget cuts and austerity? Who needs schools? I certainly wish her well, but it's obvious who this plan is designed to benefit. You're calling from a 775 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Rob in Reno.
Hey, Rob, what's going on?
Hey, I wanted to talk about science and what is and isn't science, and like IQ and intelligence, and why that is definitively not science.
Okay.
But it's going to take a little more than 2 minutes, and I don't want to feel rushed.
Okay.
Is that all right?
I would keep as tight as you can to around 2 minutes, but go ahead.
Well, okay. So first, let me just give a little background. I'm a biologist. I have a degree in biology, and no scientists out there think that science is any more important or academically rigorous or intellectually more stimulating than any other field. That's not how scientists feel. But there is a demarcation in science and what science is, and it's enough to make schools at your university a science school and a not science school, and it's important enough to demarcate in professionalism too. And so this is what that is, and this is how it's going to apply to intelligence and IQ. Science, simply put, is the systematic endeavor to analyze phenomena using universal methods and measures. Let me repeat that. Science is the systematic endeavor to analyze phenomena using universal methods and measures.
Okay.
This is where intelligence and IQ run up against that. You can't study humans in ways that you don't study other phenomena in the universe. You have to talk about people in the same way that we talk about dolphins or comets or bacteria. That's what universality of that means. And so when you have to use scientific universality, you have to look at the human brain in the same way that you look at other organisms. Mm-hmm. And so intelligence and IQ force us to do that, right? So, for example, this is literally, I hate the word literally, but literally where this conversation starts and ends in the actual halls of science. So every semester, students come in and they ask like a genetics professor or a biology professor or an evolution professor, and they go, what makes people smart? What's the gene? And they go, well, I don't know what makes people smart, but I can tell you this. If you go outside and you can tell me what makes that dog smarter than another dog, we'll give you a Nobel Prize. Better yet, if you can tell me what makes that dog smarter than a cat, we'll give you 2. When you do that, you come here and you start talking to me about intelligence tests and intelligence to people. Now, believe it or not, and I'm not sounding glib or dismissive or trite or hyperbolic. That is literally where that conversation starts and ends in science. Right?
Well, so
There
what
are
about,
no
so then why is there so much,
Hold on.
so then, no, hold on.
Hold on. I have to talk about science and stuff. In order to get what
all right,
your
bring
questions will be
hold on
answered.
one second. Hold on. I'm going to ask you this question because I got to keep this in lane here. Why is it that there's so much? Is he still talking? All right, I don't know how to deal with this. If you're gonna, all right, I got to ask you. I'm going to ask you a question. So why, if that's the case, is there such a public representation in the broader American imagination and people who do seem to represent? I mean, we'll set aside Charles Murray, but someone like Steve Pinker, who makes very sweeping claims, not necessarily about race and IQ, but certainly about IQ and measuring intelligence. How does what you're saying fit with that?
There is no actual scientific data on that. Let me tell you, I'm being totally clear. That's sociology. Sociology is not science. And I'm not trying to hurt people's feelings. But sociology does not use the methods and units of science. And there's no sociology school on earth that is considered a science school. Okay? That's why. So sociologists can talk about whatever they want. And they're going to. Because like I was going to say, I was going to try to get further into this. Right? So when you start talking about the human brain in science, you have to start asking questions that have to do with the way other animals think, right? You have to start using the methodologies of science, right? I can't actually do IQ in science unless I'm prepared to do IQ on alligators. I can't. So that's where science, the actual field of science, ends. Now, I'm going to get a little more specific, even though I don't have to. I'm going to talk about 2 other things, the units of science. Okay. We use in science this thing called SI units. SI is the Scientific International System of Units. These units have been developed over the centuries to be so universal and specific that a meter is a meter everywhere in the universe. A second is a second everywhere in the universe. A Newton is a Newton, so on and so forth. These units are so absolutely specific and universal that I can use a second to measure the age of the universe in seconds. And I can also delineate that second by billionths in using the cesium atom to measure the speed of light.
Okay.
We can use the meter to measure the distance. I'm just saying, I'm trying to explain to you how this matters. The units within science are so absolutely universal and specific that we can tell the center of gravity in a solar system in another galaxy. Now let's talk about IQ as a unit. You want to do a test in 2018 about stuff you know in English.
Yep.
And then you want to give it to other people and ask them about stuff they
There's
know.
no
in their
way it
life.
could be a universal variable.
And then you want to talk about that being what judges intelligence for dinosaurs?
Right.
Get the fuck out of town. Science doesn't even let it get the fuck. Okay?
Yeah, that makes sense.
This is where it ends. But look, I got to put the final nail in this coffin now. This is what hurts liberals the most. You have to ask, does this even exist in nature? And the answer conclusively is no. And I know people want to believe that you're smart. Nature doesn't recognize this as a concept. You want to believe that you have a degree and all the stuff you've learned is material, and you know that Neil Postman matters and Thoreau is overrated. But these things don't matter in evolution. Nature doesn't care what you know. Everything you know.
Are you listening to this, Brendan?
Your experience.
Yeah, take it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, look, it's not about, and it's, people want to believe that they can measure in your brain in some way that you can't measure a zebra. And it just doesn't matter. And it's not that science doesn't ask these questions. We do, but we can't measure in the units that science uses to measure the height of a dolphin, right? I can measure how fast a cheetah runs compared to a human. I can measure our dentition, and I can compare our gut flora and our immune spectrum to that of any other mammal or quadruped or any other living organism, for that matter. But I can't talk to whales about race, and I can't ask fucking beavers about their economic upbringing, because science doesn't recognize that methodology, and that's that construct.
Got it.
Okay, so
I appreciate the call. It's fascinating. Thank you.
Okay,
appreciate it, man.
Bullshit. Let it go.
Thank you. I buy it. I actually thought that was very interesting call. I actually buy a lot of that. I mean, I think that universal. Even, I mean, he's talking across, species, but even like across time. I liked Hunter Motz, who I had on my show to talk about, to debunk IQ myths. He talked in another interview that intelligence, like the Latin root of intelligence, is apparently just like the ability to distinguish between right and wrong decisions, which is fascinating. And then it goes from this very abstract thing to something that's like very operationalized in different environments, right? Like the most sort of scientifically advanced, the person in this society that we might think of as being the most kind of intellectually advanced wouldn't be able to survive in Papua New Guinea, as an example. Like the intelligence required to survive in that environment is a vastly different thing. Now, obviously, cultures like to valorize themselves and value their sort of way of doing things over another. And I'm not a relativist. I mean, I think obviously we can make those sort of relative distinctions, like better for all its flaws, better how, certainly legally how the United States treats women than Saudi Arabia or Iran. That's true. But those are actually I think people get really lost in this. There's blind relativism, and then there's massive sweeping generalizations and judgments. We can make tight, narrow claims like Saudi and U.S. legal system and women's rights, right? But the broader claim that, going to the Papua New Guinea example, I mean, in some ways, in Papua New Guinea, people in a traditional society, they're certainly significantly less burdensome on the environment than we are. They actually enjoy in some ways much nicer lifestyles. So I think that's where and then we can also judge it, of course, in our own societies. And that is where somebody who it's gotten filtered in the public in a kind of like woo-woo sort of way. But Howard Gardner at Harvard, when he researched multiple intelligences, I mean, that's a real academic field. And it is, used in pedagogy. And it's another thing that, again, certain types of people like to dismiss because they're not interested in tracking the various different ways of sort of human excellence and knowing. But those are actually very important data points and very worth being aware of as far as I'm concerned. You're calling from a +266 area code. Or is it Skype? Is that a Skype call?
Yeah, Skype call.
Hey, what's going on? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Tim from Canada again. How's it going?
Hey, what's going on, Tim?
Not too bad. Did you get the Super Bowl by chance?
No, I skipped it, to be honest with you. I didn't want to go to a party, and I was just burned out, so I chilled. It's the first Super Bowl I've skipped in ages. Cool. And it seemed like the wrong one to skip. It actually seemed like a great game.
Yeah, I did that too, man. I didn't want to watch it, but then it was a good game, so I watched the end of it, so it was pretty good. Nice. Anyway, what I want to talk to you about today was some of the things that you're talking about on Friday, which, first off, Paul Elam. You guys were talking about him for the time that you had him on your show that one time.
It was like really a standalone. It wasn't on the show. It was a standalone debate that Matt Binder did with him for our YouTube channel, yeah.
Yeah, where he read off his... It wasn't even really a debate because he just read a prepared statement and didn't really try to debate Matt at all. Anyway, you guys wonder what he's been up to since then.
Sure.
There is one thing of note that I wanted to mention he has been up to. He started a international conference for MRAs about 2 years ago in London, with this other MRA, a British guy named Mike Buchanan, who at one time was a conservative MP, a pretty prominent member.
Wow.
So he decided to go off and start his own political party called Justice for Boys and Men and the Women Who Love Them, which is the most strange political party name I've ever heard in my entire life.
It sounds
but,
really
powerful. It is what it is.
Yep.
Yeah. It's really just an MRA political party, but anyway. So they have this conference, and I assume they'll have it this year, too. I did want to recommend a YouTube channel if you guys ever want to research these people. His name is Kevin Logan. He's in the SJW crowd on YouTube, and he has a whole series about he sort of like catalogs all the major MRAs on YouTube and the internet at large.
Okay.
So maybe check him out. Also, about Jimmy Kimmel, I want to give him a lot of credit for that segment because I find that it shows a lot of the immigration debate going on right now with the Dreamers. And I think the most profound moment of that was when he was talking to that woman on the far left who said, I mean by the far left, I mean the shot, not the far left.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She was saying that, like, she said, Jimmy, I believe that you'll agree with me. And she goes into her whole America is the greatest thing ever, and he was like, no, I don't agree.
That were the most that were compassionate. That were the most compassionate, and he said, no, I don't agree. Which is just I mean, of course. I mean, yeah, right.
You just don't see pushback on when someone says that most time in the media, like on CNN or
no. Jimmy
whatever.
did a great job.
So I thought Jimmy
did a great job. That was just a lazy cliche that this woman was trotting out as part of justifying her disgusting position and her lack of humanity with these people, and it was great to see him call her on it. I appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much. All right, let's do some sound. This is Sebastian Gorka looking very... I mean, he doesn't look fully awake yet or something. He looks very kind of... He looks even for him. He always looks pretty out of it, but he looks really...
Sleepy Saturday call-in shows.
C-SPAN's bullshit. My whole career is taken off. I can do Fox now. Look at me...
Washington Journal's no Lou Dobbs.
Look at me slumming at C-SPAN.
No, I actually think Gorka approaches C-SPAN differently. I think he's like, see how serious I am. I'm on C-SPAN.
Right. They allow black Africans through the phone lines, and I just handle them with total adroitness. I am not into tit for tat justice, and I'm like, to be honest with you, I don't really care per se about Gorka being in the country, but like, Jesus Christ, the just pure human pleasure of watching this buffoon, jackass, proto-fascist scum in one of these hits and just some ICE thugs just rush up on him and just be like, get to the ground, would just be such a delicious experience. I don't know if this is quite the next best thing, but this is pretty good on C-SPAN, kind of like us, and unlike so many other people in the modern media environment, they are confronted with, anybody who wants to call in and Gorka's there. He's doing his usual nonsense, and this caller, Henry, is not having it with him and the whole white supremacist cabal of them.
We'll go to Michigan next on the Democrats line. Henry, good morning.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to try and establish some ground rules. I'd like to be allowed to make my comments without interruption by Sebastian, because these clever right-wingers, they have a way of interrupting you. So
I think Steve's in charge.
Make your point.
No.
If I am interrupted, I'd like to be able to rebut and not be cut off. First of all, I'd like to say that, the elections in 2018 are perhaps the most consequential in our history, because we have to stop an impending dictatorship by this white supremacist, right-wing traitor. And Donald Trump, make no mistake, is a traitor, along with everybody in his orbit.
Henry, why do you say he's a traitor?
Okay. I'm glad you asked me that question. We have to look at his relationship with the Russians. Donald Trump is owned by the Russian oligarchs because they are the ones who funded him when U.S. banks wouldn't. They have compromising information on him. We talk about the dossier. Well, what nobody is saying is that the dossier has been 80% has been proven to be legitimate, and 20% has been yet to be proven but has not been disproven.
Again, 2018 will be a very, very consequential election. I'm saddened by people who live in an alternate universe who use words such as dictator, white supremacist, and traitor. That's inflammatory and that's dangerous language. I can tell you as a person who's worked for the president in the West Wing, he doesn't have a racist bone in his body. The one thing that came through to me most clearly from working for him is that he doesn't care who you voted for. He doesn't care whether you voted for Hillary. He doesn't care whether you wanted Bernie to win. He doesn't care if you sat at home in November and didn't vote at all. He wants two things for you. He wants you to be safe, and he wants you and your family to prosper. That's who President Trump is. The Steele dossier, 80% is proven. How do you mathematically prove the contents of a completely propagandized information operation as true in any way, shape, or form? I'll just quote one line from an FBI senior employee that is in the Nunes memo. We know that Steele and Orr were individuals who were desperate to make sure President Trump didn't become president.
Is that a black African with phone access? Why aren't you calling to complain about what's happening in Chicago where the black Africans are running rampant? I'm really surprised he didn't do that, actually. Are you black, caller? Why are you not concerned about what's happening in Chicago, which is daily carnage and Sharia, where Africans are shooting each other by the bushelful? Nothing could be. The president doesn't have a racist bone in his body, and he doesn't have an extra bone like you. No double ankle bone, caller.
His defense of, like, how could you even know if it was 80% versus 90%? That's an interesting little defense of his, because, you know, the caller really should have said, well, you know, this specific thing from the dossier has been confirmed, this specific thing, rather than going through the metrics, so he could be like, what's your methodology there?
Did you count the urine on the blood that our dear leader was urinating on? Were you there when Tatiana peed on the pillow where Michelle Obama's head had rested? I think not.
And it's a bit frustrating hearing these calls, right? Because, like, the guy is obviously he's has his convictions and he feels onto it, but, like, you can hear him talking in the sort of like MSNBC kind of like frenzied up, like Russiagate ways, right?
You know what I think would be better is to just say, like, I don't know what goal. I don't think that there. First of all, my belief is that I don't think there's a single oligarch in the world that Donald Trump wouldn't prostate for. Okay, including, I think that is one of the only things that transcends his racism. Like that joke I made about his defense of the disgusting comments he made about Haiti, being like, I landed money for Duvalier, it's totally unfair. I think that's true. I wouldn't be surprised if stories came out like, oh yeah, no, actually in the 80s, they were, the Duvaliers were washing some money and Trump was involved with it. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, so part of Trump's racism might be because he's just been like conditioned to see like, oh, if you're not white, you probably don't have money.
Exactly. So I think that you could call up and I don't think you have to, I think you have to say, Donald Trump is of whatever oligarch is calling the shots. Mostly it's American oligarchs because that's who runs our political process. And, like, you know, Sebastian, you must feel incredibly lucky that a essentially fake garbage diploma, or what in my opinion is a essentially fake garbage diploma, some embarrassing books that you've written, and basically being like on the Yenta lecture circuit and a very questionable immigration forum, you've rocked to the top of modern republicanism. Does this reflect your talent or the fact that Republicans reward bizarre, mediocre white supremacy with accents? And I'll take my question off air. Thank you. I think that's what you should do. Oh, this is the infamous, the diagram. So this is from Sebastian Gorka's terrorism thesis. And I said, when we first reviewed this, when we did our first Sebastian Gorka dissertation review. So for people who are listening, there's one bubble on the left. It says terrorism group.
In red. The
in
color
red.
terror.
And then around it says actor and the attack. Then there's an arrow that points to a big bubble that says terror attack victim. And then there's another arrow that pops up to another bubble which says society, political elite, general public, and international opinion. And then C, target of terror, resultant fear and political pressure. And then on the lower column, on the lower end, it says B, target of violence and victim. Now, actually, this diagram is a lot better than the other one, which literally, if I recall, was like an axis that basically was like something to the effect of like, good, not good. But every time I saw these, when I first looked at them, I really thought, I was like, I'm not a big charts and graphs guy. Like, is there something I'm missing here? And we had to realize, like, there is literally nothing that's being missed. I believe Sebastian Gorka's own dissertation advisor was sort of like, well, you know.
Wouldn't call him an expert on terrorism.
He did the reading.
Which, you know, I've been in grad school even, you know, that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, right, fair enough. He's a terrorism expert in the sense that, like, every, like, schmuck that you've met, like, on a golf course is like, you know, I read the Friedman column and just what the Emirates are doing, pretty innovative.
I have 36 course hours.
I have a degree in global geostrategy from Trump University.
And 16 hours independent study.
I have an independent certificate of study from the McDonald's Extension School of Global Anticipatory Security Threats with a concentration on Sun Tzu quotes in translation.
I hadn't seen that before, but thank you for that. But the thing that took me the most was that he has the different color circles around the parts of the graph.
Right.
But they're all of like varying like thickness of line and like different like arrows. It's like he was making it was like, damn, I need to find the thin one for the attack victim because they're the most vulnerable.
Very
and society is the thickest, the most insulated.
Let's use a bold circle around society because that is a very impermeable membrane.
Very, very perceptive young Padawan. This is exactly the type of work that I did at the Hungarian Technical Extension Institute of Geostrategic. You know, like, you know that he would be like the type of guy who would go to, like, you know, like the programs, like the more fake they are, the more pompous the name. Mm-hmm. You know, like the, you know, like, yeah, like the New York Technical Institute for Geostrategic Capacity Building and Threat Anticipation Analysis.
Every school that's on the subway, pretty much.
Right. Although those schools at least teach you a goddamn trade. He's probably like the only person who went out of like extension, essentially extension school. It's like, yep, I now am literally a White House terrorism advisor, so go screw yourself.
Society has a wider border because when you get into society, they question your credentials.
Credentials, terrorism attack, Jews, television appearance. I like to see his SWOT analysis for his career. Muslims, Jews, TV, attack, Republicans, Palm Beach, Florida, anxiety, Israel, accent.
He also appears
What the hell is this?
He appears to have updated Maslow.
Yeah, this. Oh, wow.
It's like the hierarchy of like nationalist needs.
The hierarchy of I am not. My father was not a communist. Needs security of individual, security of immediate family, security of tribe, clan, security of village, religious community, security of landowner unit. Whoa. Now he's really showing his cards there. Security of empire, city, state. Like that one right below city state is how we reinstitute slavery, Steve. See, Bannon was looking at this chart, just like quaffing, rubbing alcohol. Like, oh, this is amazing stuff. Oh, yeah. It's fascinating, Sebastian. There is something very dangerous about people that are like just above average, but really, really grossly inflate that.
Well, it's like when
intellectual capacity.
Like Bannon and the emails when he's like, "This is marginalia, Milo. You got to get into the real stuff, like Sebastian and his graphs."
That's right.
Yeah, he used
in the BuzzFeed exposés, linking the connections between Breitbart and Nazis, there were these emails where Bannon would be like, Milo, like, you got to stop writing articles about how, like, the girls in Ghostbusters are fat, which is really stupid because that's the whole reason that Milo has a following, is that kind of, like, adolescent misogynist anxiety. And then he would respond with, like, yeah, that was great. Like actually the intellectual coherence of like some type of outsourced, boring as hell adolescent resentment Milo column about Ghostbusters, probably a little bit more coherent than Sebastian's graphs on terrorism. What a world.
Can you imagine
being
like
conservative is the easiest thing on the planet?
Imagine if you were in the class with that guy and you're just like, look at this fucking idiot. Like with his dumb like graphs that have like stated more complexly and less clearly things that have been like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is not exactly, you know, obscure. That's what you learned in like 100.
What if you took Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you put a little fascist patina over it? Do 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 do. First need, secure the family. Second need, and then when you really want to actualize yourself, you reinstitute apartheid.
I think maybe Sebastian Gorka just needs to get in with Steve Klubeck a little bit, because I heard that a little bit in what you were saying there.
A little Klubeck?
Yeah.
Like, keep it simple. Hierarchy of needs. Give people health. Give people roads. Then Nancy Pelosi tells you you're a policy genius. Then you get a hooker. Keep it simple. If I was making like Flashdance 2, I would stop making fun of Steve Klubeck to see if he could be cast as an extra. Although, you know, to Steve Klubeck's credit, that guy, you know, he had his moment in The Sun a month ago where he was like, I'm telling Schumer, don't talk about poverty anymore. Keep it simple. No potholes. And then he shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
He totally, like,
I feel like
maybe because he's not a billionaire, he has like an inkling of self-awareness. Just like, I made a real ass of myself.
We've had enough.
Okay,
we
so
need a new brand.
And what is that brand? Because right now there is an opportunity. If Democrats lose, for example, in the state of Virginia, if that isn't a wake-up call that the Democratic leadership needs to get together and say, we've got to find a middle ground. Because if the Democrats continue to go far to the left, you've got that whole group in the center that aren't going to go the way of Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. And then you're going to fracture the party even more.
It's fractured. It's broken. We need a new brand. It needs to be simple. Keep it simple. Tax reform. Keep it simple. Infrastructure. No bumps in the road. What more do we have to say? They need to have a new brand created.
I love it. I love it on so many levels because it's like the nonsense that Stephanie Rule in the frame that like that already is the case. The Democrats already are a centrist, corporate favoring, modest as hell party. And then he's like, he's speaking in levels of generality. Like Trump would be like, I think you got to say a little bit more, Steve. I mean, what does the tax bill mean? Like, I'm going to lie and pretend that it supports working people, as an example. I'm going to tell a lie about it. Keep it simple.
What more do we need to say?
What more do we need to say? That's how I created Diamond Resorts and Spas. You fake, you say you can have an unlimited vacation time, and people show up and they don't have the keys that week. Keep it simple. It's a classic fake spa/pyramid scheme. That's how I made my money. I told Nancy. With the white collar sticking out, no tie. Like, at least put a tie around your fat neck, you bastard. Trying to act like he's all like hipster cash. Like, I'm a boss, but I'm relatable.
Yeah, he's like the type of boss who would like invite you golfing and think it was just some sort of grand gesture. Like, this is probably the best thing that's happening to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're definitely not going to give you time off for your baby. We're going to actually, in fact, skirt what's legally mandated. But here's what I will do. You'll play a course of golf with me, and I'll teach you my success secrets. And you better let me win. Keep it simple. No paternity leave. Play golf with me. I teach you my success secrets. What more do we need to do? Bring the gulags back.
Hell yes.
Bring the gulags back. You're calling from a 610 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Michael.
Yes.
It's Michael from Pennsylvania. How are you?
Hey, you cocky son of a bitch. This is John from San Antonio. You better mind your P's and Q's. I'll smack the taste out of your mouth.
Now, do you have the board ready?
I do. Is the board ready, Matt? I should ask you.
Breaking news.
Okay.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
The U.S. Supreme Court has denied the stay in the PA gerrymandering case.
Great. Good. So where does that leave us?
Justice Alito has denied the Pennsylvania GOP. So we will have a new districts in Pennsylvania.
That's really, really big news for 2018.
Yes, it is. Huge news.
So how does that break down?
Because the League of Women... Go ahead.
No, go ahead. How does that break down? What do these districts look like? What kind of seat pickups are we talking about?
So this was the most gerrymandered state in the country. Some people argued it was North Carolina. But basically, from a historical perspective, no other state has ever been gerrymandered this much. So, for example, we won the majority of congressional votes in 2012, and the Republicans got 5 seats. I'm sorry, the Republicans got 13 seats, and the Democrats got 5 seats. So, they get 53% of the vote, and we get 20% of the seats.
So losers.
That's that's
fake,
losers right there.
Fake news.
So we're gonna. So as far as like nationally, we're gonna get one more safe Democratic seat for sure, and then there's gonna be probably another 6 toss-up seats, and I'd say like 5 of those are lean Democratic, and one's like a true toss-up state.
Wow.
So
this is a big, very big deal.
It's gonna be a huge game.
Now, what is this talk about? And now Republicans weren't complying with this, but now, I mean, was it because they were waiting for the court to hear back from the Supreme Court, and now they sort of have? I mean, as sort of reckless as they are, I mean, what recourse? They don't have any recourse now, short of like Trump declaring martial law.
There are
Pennsylvania.
There's more stuff they can do just to kind of keep the legal process churning.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, like, what will happen is if they don't get maps, basically Pennsylvania will not go back to the old gerrymandered maps. What they'll do is they'll just say we have 18 at-large seats. So when you go to vote in November, every Pennsylvanian will have 18 votes for Congress. So we could end up, if that were to happen, it would be a statewide election for 18 congressmen, which is totally legal under federal statute. So
that could be good.
That would be very good. They would never do that. That's
right.
That's not.
That would be too good. That would be too good. So
yeah.
So what kind of Democratic candidates are we talking about here too? Like, so again, I'll just make the obvious distinction. We're not going to do the Jimmy Dore stupid thing. So we want all Democratic pickups, but at the same time, we know that most Democrats suck. So are we talking about stop the bleeding, put in a hack Democrat over a fascist, or are we also talking about potentially a couple of people in Congress that might actually be really good left populist Congress people?
So the answer is we have a lot of really left-wing candidates in Pennsylvania now. Just this weekend, we had what's known as the Keystone Progress Summit, which all the far-left groups in Pennsylvania come together. And for example, I got to talk with Larry Krasner for a while.
Oh, great.
Talk about that if you want. I met the Papa's campaign manager. He's the guy DSA candidate who challenged the Costa family in Pittsburgh for district justice. He's the one who is refusing to evict people. I don't know if you saw that story.
No, that's great. Send it to me. We'll do a shout out on TMBS. Send that to me.
And, so there's like two, there's a bunch of really great people running for Congress, but the two that are kind of in the suburbs and exurbs, one is Jess King, who's running in kind of the Harrisburg, Lancaster area.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is Gregory Edwards, who's running for the 15th in my district. And, these are endorsed by Justice Democrats, PCCC. You go down the line. So we're getting much, much better candidates as well. It's not just...
And they're talking, are they talking, I'm assuming in these districts, like I would assume they would have had to advance on social issues because the Democratic Party generally, on the right, has moved in the right direction on, transgender rights, all of these issues. But to the kind of broader appeal in those districts, are they getting really serious about the inequality and economic message?
So, what's really interesting about these candidates is they are running on a strong anti-incrementalist message.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the time for slow progress is over. The time for big leaps is now, $15 minimum wage. Jimmy Reefer Cake, listen, legalized marijuana.
Right.
Not decriminalized.
Legalize it.
And you go down the line.
No more bullshit. Just legalize with, don't worry about decriminalizing.
Bullshit.
Right. That's a good example of that. Right.
And so that's the exciting part.
Do you also think, I actually read a piece, and I've been thinking a little bit about, as we head into 18, President Obama's he's gonna reemerge in a much more significant way, and
God, I hope not.
Well, I'm kind of two minds with this, because I think, and that's what I'm curious, is that yes, policy-wise, his legacy, all of these things, even some of it with the national security stuff. Alyona and I needed to go over it. There's a lot of problems with the politics that Obama represents. At the same time, he's now up to a 60% approval rating. He is, a very, well, look, for reasons that are obvious, right? He's an incredibly likable person. If you have a personal issue with Barack Obama, I'm very skeptical of you, right?
You're an asshole.
Right? Yeah, you're probably, you're an asshole, right? And it does seem to me that, he's going to come out and he's going to do his brand and he's going to do the purple state stuff, but he doesn't seem like he has he doesn't seem opposed to, and what's distinct from him with, his politics and his preferences are to the center right, and I disagree with. On the other hand, he doesn't seem like he's not a Tony Blair kind of figure. He's going to be willing to go out and campaign with left candidates. Ironically, Phil Murphy, right? Jesus Christ, he's a Goldman Sachs guy and an Obama ambassador. So there's a lot of question marks. The ambassador part, not really, but the Goldman part. But his campaign, he campaigned on infrastructure. He campaigned on a state bank. He campaigned on inequality. He campaigned on weed legalization. And he was one of the $15 minimum wage. He was one of the only people in 17 that Obama went out strong for. So I'm wondering, in some ways, can Obama be, he might be just a good, he just is that charismatic presence. And if he gets on board with people talking the economic talk, he might be a real asset.
Yeah, the thing about Obama, as long as he's leading from the point of view of charisma and organizing people and broad appeal, I'm all for it.
Right.
If he's bringing his consultants, class,
right,
and his political advisors, I don't want any of that.
Right. Right.
And it's something that Larry Krasner said to me. He goes, Mike, in my race, I was told to be unelectable. And the thing is, my piece of advice for everybody who wants to run for office right now is be unelectable. Yeah. He was the pro bono representative of Black Lives Matter in Philadelphia.
Right.
He supported Occupy Wall Street pro bono.
Right.
These groups, knew that he was on their side. And that was supposed to be stuff that made you unelectable.
Right.
But the opposite happened. He got, turnout in the DA race in Philadelphia went up 70%. He got more votes for DA. than anyone has in 30 plus years.
Right.
So that's the advice. So as much as, listen, I like Barack Obama's brand as much as the next guy.
Right.
But I think that this wave is happening because people want to changes in policy and
Definitely.
are rejecting the Republicans.
No,
So
I mean, I
that's
think
kind of the
there's
way
a lot of places in the country where, Obama and Bernie Sanders would be like the most, exciting people for people to see. And one is because, it's just an incredibly likable person and a reminder of when there was a person who was a fully functioning adult who was president. And the other, I think, is because, I mean, Bernie Sanders is obviously speaking to really a lot of the moment right now, and that's what people are going to need to speak to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this moment is, I've been in politics for a while, and this is one of the most exciting times we've ever had, because in 2006 and 2008, it was more of a rejection of Bush.
Right.
But now we have that rejection of the GOP, but we also have this class consciousness growing, that new ideology, people doing, they're not just reacting in a rage to what's going on. They have a plan. They have a vision for a better future, which is the thing the left has been missing since the 30s.
Is the governor of Pennsylvania popular, and how does he fit into this as a Democratic leader?
So Tom Wolf, how would I put this? I mean, obviously I supported him in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
I see him, he's more of an establishment guy type, but I think he's pretty popular. I mean, he's been holding back just a parade of horribles from the GOP for his entire time as governor.
Right.
They tried to ban abortion and tried to make the state right to work. They wanted to ban local municipalities from having their own minimum wage. It goes down the list. So he has that going for him, and he's running against guys that literally had Pizzagate people, as volunteers. And
and that's going to be all Republicans at this point, right? Like, I think when we can stop saying at a certain point, like, oh, this Republican campaign had this psycho. Like, yeah, of course. I mean,
Well, you saw the American Nazi Party as the Republican nominee in the the 4th of Illinois.
In the 4th of Illinois, a Holocaust denier, and I mean, and it's appalling.
No, he's the American Nazi Party president.
Gee, I did not.
Not
know
just a
that.
Holocaust denier.
He's only been. That's amazing because the coverage of him has been that he's a Holocaust denier, not that he's actually a fully paid up Nazi. But I mean, again, it needs to be noted, and it's terrifying and it's distinct, but it shouldn't surprise anybody. And so, that's the future play here. And I think it's interesting because when you look at, recently there was this talk in the Richard Spencer crowd that the next target of their white nationalism was going to be Bernie voters, and they're going to pretend to have an economically populist message. Now, I got to say, if you're anywhere on a map of people that could be persuaded by Richard Spencer, I mean, you're obviously a disgusting and disconnected person. But that said, I mean, there's an interesting opportunity now where the Democrats can be so clearly, if we took over, the party of sanity, social progress, decency, multi-identity America, which is where the country is heading, even with all of the assaults. And then at the same time, the Republicans, for all of this white nationalist stuff, it's still controlled by the donors. It's still controlled by Kochs. And they're fine with some of that as long as they get
I don't think they care. I don't think they care about democracy or equality or anything like that.
Not at all.
They don't mind.
They don't mind. And it all goes to Nancy McLean, Democracy in Chains. That book really, really explains the dynamic and why there really is no fundamental conflict inside the Republican Party and why there's a lot of room for Democrats to synthesize. There's no conflict between social progress and economic democracy and economic and real universal leftism. What were you going to say, Brendan?
I was just going to say it's interesting hearing Mike's sentiment because there's a new piece in the latest N+1 magazine called Goodbye Cold War by Aziz Rana, and he talks about the idea of this shared common belief has permeated since the Cold War, and now we're moving towards that post-era, and we're finally seeing those played out.
Like the common belief of like a kind of market fundamentalism or that type of thing. Yeah.
A bulwark against communism.
Yeah, no, and I think
Like
it's just it sounds, and I mean, look, people like us, we watch, Red Dawn as a comedy. I mean, that kind of hysteria could not be further from. It's both anachronistic and has nothing to do with our lives. It has not been what has influenced our lives, and people are, at a certain point, reality needs to catch up a little bit.
And the left has evolved, too. I mean, the one thing about the Soviet Union is it imposed a certain kind of authoritarianism on the left.
Right.
Because they were one of the largest forces.
Right.
And they were putting out the intellectual product. It's like the Koch brothers, who they fund. The Soviet Union, it's the same thing. They were funding a certain flavor of left and pushing down on a different flavor. And now that they're gone, the organic left can grow, and we can learn from the mistakes of the past.
Well, obviously, there's an informal conspiracy
obviously.
between the Soviets and the American, right and center that, like, oh, yeah, this is what those ideas represent, bureaucratic dictatorship and sclerotic, abusive society. And, of course, it couldn't be further from the truth, and you could just as easily have a counter-reading of, Marx that said, oh, okay, this led to the creation of the German Social Democratic Party and all of these accomplishments in health and culture and public goods and services and, and of course also the NHS in Britain and all sorts of, actually, I think where it gets complicated is we have to acknowledge that the Soviet Union was on the right side of funding a lot of liberation movements in Africa and Latin America, which were also flawed. But again, like, you got to be on the side of anti-imperialism.
History is complicated.
That's a fundamental proposition. Yeah. They were funding the ANC. We were backing the apartheid regime through, the 80s. I think that says something, too. Appreciate the call, man.
Yeah, bud. Anytime.
Thanks,
man. You have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye. Now, speaking of capitalism and reaching limits, back in the day, I did stand-up comedy in college, and I used to do a routine about companies branding themselves. So one was the idea of companies running brand campaigns, protesting themselves for their own labor abuses. And I also did some jokes about, and this goes back, I think, probably was like 10, 15 years ago or something. There were these Apple campaigns where it was the Think Different campaign. And it would be Gandhi at a spinning wheel, Dylan looking profound while he composed a piece of music. I think it was also John Lennon. There was a couple of other iconic cultural figures. And the notion was that if you bought an Apple product, you were somehow tapping into this brand identity. Naomi Klein, wrote a great book on this in the 90s called No Logo, where she talked about sort of late-stage capitalism and building a self-identity through a brand identity, because all these other categories of being a person and community and so on was stripped away in a society that had been completely taken over by the market. Thomas Frank also wrote One Market Under God. He explored some of these same themes.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, I think that's his first book, actually. In many ways, I like all of Frank's books, but that might be my favorite of his book, actually. I think that was because I think he founded the Baffler, and so that was sort of their first stuff in the late 90s. It was this kind of like anti-globalization, but also a lot of interest in things like branding.
Oh, okay. You said Thomas Frank. I thought you said Thomas Friedman.
Oh no, Thomas Friedman did not write that.
Okay, I misheard.
No, Thomas Friedman wrote, God is a quadrangle, how a flattening world means God is in your pocket and it's an iPhone on a plane or some shit. I don't know. So some nonsense, some globaloni bullshit. So actually, I think Thomas Friedman would approve of this ad. This is from last night's Super Bowl. The Ram truck. I don't even know how to describe this. This is just unbelievably tasteless. Check it out.
If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. but recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness. By giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know the theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics in physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace. Soul generated by love.
So if you're just listening, you actually got to hear at least partially a clip of an unbelievable piece of speech making by MLK Jr. I got to say, before we get into the broader critique of this, look, this points to a problem. People have complained about it for a long time. The King family is garbage with his legacy. And look, I obviously, he's one of America's most important figures. He was a murdered, assassinated icon for every form of justice. They should be taken care of. They should live the legacy. But they have turned it into, I mean, they treat his legacy like it's Mickey Mouse. And it's disgusting. And as Will Menaker pointed out on Twitter, he said the movie, and this is true, the movie Selma had to write original speeches for MLK to say because his family wouldn't license his words and recording to them. Glad they finally found a good brand partner in Dodge Ram trucks that will honor his legacy. I mean, it's disgusting. It's disgusting that a brand would reduce his speech to that. It's disgusting that the family would license and uses his legacy in this way and not as a natural cultural commons, which is, of course, what he is. And look, I mean, I think at least we're at the point where this is both so audacious and absurd to take a speech that is saying you have access to greatness and capacity with you through your humanity, and therefore you can contribute and do great things no matter what your station in life, is translated to if you buy a Ram truck, you are part of greatness, whether it's athletic excellence or saving people from burning buildings or being connected directly with one of the greatest American leaders in our history to his legacy. Obviously, you know, brands have pushed their association with desirable human traits to the max before. This is a total escalation, and it's insane. I mean, it makes the Apple ads look sort of safe and sort of careful. I do think, though, you can see also some of that cultural growth in, like, the pushback to this has been so broad. This wasn't just like, you know, the lefties and the irony bro. It wasn't just like the people like us were just like, oh, really? This one was like people were immediately making remixes and mocking it. I don't know. I mean, maybe Ram knows who they're playing to and the campaign will work. But I think there was a large cultural marker of like, are you serious?
Well, it's interesting, too, because I remember seeing earlier in the game that they had a commercial where it was just like Vikings, and it was like very, very white people.
Right.
And I'm wondering if like, oh, maybe we got to couch this with some like soaring, like multicultural rhetoric or something.
The King Estate has released a statement. They said, following the backlash, the King Estate said in the statement that it had reviewed the ad before it aired to make sure it met its standards and, quote, found that this overall message of the ad embodied Dr. King's philosophy that true greatness is achieved by serving others. Thus, we decided to be part of Ram's Built to Serve Super Bowl program.
That fiat money is good, folks.
If you can buy a Ram truck, then you can participate. 4x4. Global warming, fuck that. It's a Chinese hoax. I'm trying to get this cash money, motherfuckers. People have a problem with my estate using my words for a Ram ad. Well, it's like you can't say anything anymore on TV or elsewhere, Joe. People are joining the alt-right because my words won't be used for Ram ads.
You don't like my Ram? You can grab my truck nuts.
I have a clear message for them. Suck on this. Everybody can be a servant leader. You just got to get a good pre-financing plan. I actually hear that getting a car used to be like getting a house before the bubble. You probably don't even need to qualify.
Head down to your dealership today.
Head down to your dealership today. Hey, here's an idea, fellas. Remember how Volkswagen lied that it had clean diesel and really it was just a scam system to beat the regulators? Why don't you tell everybody that Ram trucks run on hydrogen? It'll take them years to find out. And you can get some dumb hippie saps to buy it. Oh, that's not your core marketing demo? Oh, well, you need something for your core marketing demo. Let me try this. Black people, stop complaining. Turn off the rap music. What's with this hatred for Mr. Trump? He's not racist. He's racial. Omarosa explained it.
Hopefully we don't get sued by the King family.
I know. Hey, none of this is original language. When they reviewed Selma, and they were just like, no, I don't think that this fits with Dr. King's core values. The film Selma does not match with. That doesn't work. But the Dodge Ram ad, that's what he was about. Capitalism's a hell of a drug. You're calling from a 418 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Oh, I'm calling from, my name's Travis. I'm calling from Quebec, Canada.
Hey, Travis, what's going on?
Much. I got triggered by Alyona just for a second because after
Alyona.
after she made a great critique of Alyona?
Alyona.
Yeah. Alyona. Okay.
Yep. She triggered you.
Yeah, well, after a really good commentary on, well, you know, I mean, pretty much everybody knows it, that American nationalism gets trotted out to kill a lot of debate prematurely or, you know, leaves it stillborn. She then was talking about, you know, how Americans have the right to critique their institutions, and then she said, I mean, maybe it's just a kind of habit of American discourse. She said, and you know, this is something that we have, and this makes us one of the most, you know, I don't know if it makes us unique in the world or if it was great or whatever. And I was kind of shocked that right after the critique of American nationalism, that just kind of slipped in there.
Really?
Because I thought, well, there's a lot of liberal democracies out there that have really robust institutions and judicial review, and arguably actually, you know, take the needs of their citizenry into, you know, better account than the American political system has managed to deliver to this point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I just thought there's this kind of habit of the way you got to talk when you're kind of locked into American discourse.
Well, I actually don't. I don't want to look. Hey, let me just say this. I'll say to you, speaking for myself, fair enough. Obviously, I mean, and it depends. There's certain areas where
I'm not even trying to pick on her or start a
but I just want to say say someone in defense of her, I guess. But I think for some people, I understand that it's a cliche. I understand that a lot of people use that cynically. I understand that there's many places in the world, you know, of course, in all sort of modern democracies, there's avenues for critique to some extent. Although, you know, as an example, I mean, obviously the fact that we have, certain constitutionally guaranteed protections makes us a bit more robust in certain speech areas than the Let me finish. Then the UK is an example. But I just want to say that, like, she, you know, I mean, again, I don't really want to, I can't get into her one way or another, but I think there are some people, including her, who really just make, you know, that's what they genuinely feel, and they appreciate it, and they might be, fresher to this country, and I don't think we need to get too sensitive about it one way or another. I don't think that needs to be read as a dig on any other place. I mean, sometimes
I just think if you read that, it's kind of the American exceptionalism, how it kind of floats into a lot of conversations.
Yeah, I didn't read it that way.
Times.
I didn't really read it that way.
If you read down the Canadian Constitution, for example, guarantees of free speech, the press, freedom of association, which our Supreme Court has read to guarantee you a right to join a union and collectively bargain.
Well, that's great. So there you go. So Canada's definitely more ahead in that regard, no doubt.
So no, it's not about. I don't want to.
But they are.
It's not about.
Yeah.
It's just if you look at it, I mean, so that was one of my observations. I think it would help Americans to get a bit out of their American skin sometimes.
Yeah, I think I would.
And then I just have one other comment on your hypothesis, because we do have universal healthcare insurance, and I do agree it does allow for a bit more of, let's say, economic freedom and mobility, because you're not stuck at a particular job to guarantee your health care. And I don't want to portray that as something that isn't kind of a remarkable achievement to have.
Right.
But I would say I don't think it's the tip of the spear that you've thought it would be in terms of rebalancing worker power vis-a-vis their bosses.
Okay.
For example.
Okay.
I think we've had it for a long time, and Canadian employers are pretty savage and try to get away with shit.
Well, I have no doubt. Of course they are. But in this context, in an American context, you cannot. This is actually a place where we are really exceptional in terms of we're obviously exceptional in terms of a developed country. It is very hard to appreciate until you have lived here and experienced it.
My whole family's from the States.
Well, I don't. So to me, yes, it would absolutely radically alter people's calculus in terms of what they thought was possible and the risks they were willing to take in a way that I don't think anybody that lives in it can appreciate. Just that particular sort of Damocles hanging over you. But I take your point. I don't think that
totally
Canada's any type of utopia.
Hustle for healthcare.
They appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much.
States.
Okay, so let's do.
So Nathan Robinson put together what Martin Luther King actually believed about commercials.
Oh, okay. Let's check this out. This is Nathan Robinson of Current Affairs.
The presence of this instinct explains why we are so often taken by advertisers. Those gentlemen of massive verbal persuasion. And they have a way of saying things to you that kind of gets you in the bind. In order to be a man of distinction, you must drink this whiskey. In order to make your neighbors envious, you must drive this type of car. In order to be lovely to love, you must wear this kind of lipstick or this kind of perfume. And before you know it, you're just buying that stuff. And I've got to drive this car because it's something about this car that makes my car a little better than my neighbor's car. And I am sad to say that the nation in which we live is the supreme culprit. And I'm going to continue to say it to America.
Every member of the King estate should just be forced to listen to that on repeat for a week.
I'm just imagining them like when Ram came to them, like, we really want to use one of your father's speeches. And then one of them was like, and he's like, no, don't talk about that one.
Not right.
Where he openly condemned
make
car
some
companies.
Stupid money. What I meant to say was, if you don't wear this lipstick, I'm not talking to you. I'm not hollering at you, girl. Coretta better come correct. And she did. Victoria's Secret. It's the only brand for loving. Dodge Ram, service, Nike athleticism. All-terrain vehicles. Apple's for the creative. You can literally establish your entire identity through brand associations. Nothing else is required.
32 miles to the gallon.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Don't worry about all that other shit. Just buy a Dodge Ram. Speaking of Canada, Justin Trudeau, who is the Macron analog, he's the mediocrity, who is the sort of one of the last vestiges of hope of discredited third way, corporate friendly, social posturing, pseudo woke governance. He's out campaigning. And as you know, in addition, there's a lot of things happening in Canada. I don't follow it that closely, to be honest. But first of all, there's a real left alternative in Canada. Secondly, he has not followed through on any number of promises, including electoral reform, the rights of the Canadian Indigenous community. And from the beginning, he has been a forceful advocate of the Keystone Pipeline, which would be absolutely disastrous for the global environment. And here he is, campaigning in a town hall in Nanaimo. And he is...
I'd say Nanaimo, but I'm not certain.
Excuse me. As he defended his government's decision to support the expansion of the Travis Mountain Pipeline through British Columbia, the crowd is going to respond to that.
A lot of people came out here to engage and to listen with the Prime Minister, to have an opportunity to engage in democracy. And
can't carry on. We'd love people to please excuse themselves and let us carry on this discussion. Heights up here with Jim.
Thank you, Chief. Not me. You don't have to respect me. You can not vote for me next time. That's no problem. But you need to... You don't respect anyone in this room? Then I'm going to have to ask you to leave this room. If you don't respect the people in this room, please leave this room. The other part of that, come on. Come on. Really? Really? Okay, this is it. Will you please respect the people in this room? No, then please leave. If you're not going to respect the people in this room, you need to leave. That's the rule. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Are you going to stay? Oh, no, well, you're still here? Okay, well then...
So there's Justin Trudeau having a temper tantrum, people disrupting his climate hustle. He's actually saying that this pipeline is essential for Canada's long-term strategy to meet its greenhouse gas emissions. Don't forget, I mean, Canada is a major, both petro state, also it's an arms exporter, which shows up in all sorts of questionable aspects of Trudeau's foreign policy. I mean, getting hit like that by an audience, I would imagine, is unbelievably annoying. But it's just funny to watch how quickly this guy who does like the I'm a nice dorky guy thing, how quickly it pops.
I also
after
feel like
a little bit of confrontation.
I feel like event security in Canada is a bit behind in terms of aggression levels. In
oh
America.
my God, are you kidding me?
How are those people still there? They're literally like talking to Trudeau.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. He's like, why am I not in America? You already would have been shot behind the barn. They would have killed you, and then they would have written a profile of my goddamn Chewbacca socks. What the hell?
The weird thing about Trudeau is his youth. It just reminds me of kids I went to college from. I don't think of like, oh, here's a head of state. I just think of like
he's kind of like a camp counselor or something who's just like, hey guys, I'm cool, I'm relatable, and you're like, sort of. Also, sort of not.
Get serious, though, guys.
Yeah, come on, guys. Yeah, no, that's what he's like. He's like, you know what? You want lights out for an extra 20 minutes? And it was like, yeah. And then 20 minutes later, you're like, fuck you. Keep them on. He's like, come on. Seriously. What the hell? I was being nice. He's such a... It's
more
amazing.
of that.
It's more of that. It's
bother Trudeau about pipelines.
Bother Trudeau about pipelines. Bother him about Indigenous people's rights. Bother him about arms exports. Bother him about electoral reform. Bother him. It's funny, too, because when you look at Macron, like, Macron's a sociopath. Like, Macron has this, like, real, like, Macron, like, he is...
Macron might just stare at the person until, like, they leave on their own accord. Just in
Macron
silence.
really reminds me, like, I have been a Tony Blair follower, and there is a certain, like, Tony Blair's like, oh, no, I will fucking kill you. Like, there is this certain, like, you think that this is all just PR and games, but I really don't care. I truly am a terrible person. Macron's more like that. Obama has a certain respectability where you're just like, man, Barack, couldn't you be better? And Trudeau's just a goofball.
Yeah, Macron's kind of like the Patrick Bateman of statesmen.
I'm a Patrick Bateman. The only thing I will give Macron is that he's totally doing, like, if I was president, like, absolutely, he's just like, yeah, today I'm fucking jumping into a submarine, and then we're going to stage another awesome, like, tennis photo shoot. Like, he is just doing, like, if his politics were actually good, I would be totally down with, like, overgrown boy fantasy president. Like, I'm just going to turn the entire state apparatus into a giant stunt shoot, like, opportunity for me. That's, like, the part of Macron that I like the most. You're calling from a 725 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? (725).
I'm 7.
Oh, sorry. Call right back. I'm fast in the draw here. Call right back. I will get you right through. You're calling from a 408 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Yes, hello. This is Stephen Miller calling from the West Wing.
Hello, Steve. What's up?
I take issue with the notion that you all insinuate that I'm racist or even like Joseph Goebbels. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
Wow, sounds like this is a very convincing impression, actually. I'm feeling sort of there's a coldness
It is
in my
a fact, and you will not deny it.
Oh. Anything else you had to add
And
there, Steve?
furthermore, I'd like to prove to you how we are not racist.
Okay, please, go ahead.
Prior to disbanding DACA back in September, President Trump and I actually thought that the majority of Dreamers were folks like your lawnmowers and your overweight mamacitas, but we were wrong. We found out a lot of Dreamers are actually fairly attractive women. So we're working on a plan. It's called the Bride Lottery System. And with this Bride Lottery System, we take single males from areas like Silicon Valley and Bismarck, North Dakota, and for $50,000 to $60,000, you could. Yes. In fact, you can be part of this program too if you wish. You could purchase your attractive dreamer bride. She gets citizenship, and the United States takes the cut. So it's a win system for single men, attractive dreamer women, and the U.S. government.
Sounds like sounds innovative, Steve. Thank you for the call. You're calling from a 928 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
You say 928? That's me, right?
Yeah, that's you. What's up?
Hey, yeah, I actually am just calling because I don't know if a lot of people know that there's actually a memo that James Comey had written. Did you happen to catch any of that stuff?
I don't know it. I don't know which.
The
memo.
original one released
original
before
one?
the election.
The one before the election.
No, yeah, actually, I have one right here. I believe it says GOP get gunned up and clap quick. Donald Jr. get gunned up and clap quick. Your whole damn political party gunned up and clap quick. How many Hillary lines gonna come out your fat lips? Wanted to be on every last one of Obama's classics.
Thank you for the call. Nice. Jay-Z. So today we passed another milestone in the war on reality. Das Trumpenführer tweeted saying that demonstrations in the UK in favor of the National Health Service are proof that universal health systems don't work. This prompted Jeremy Hunt, a man whose name by happy coincidence, yes, the worst health secretary, our worst health secretary in history, to tweet back in defense of universal health care, something which he's been working to undermine through his tenure. Erg, these are exhausting times. Also great work on the opioid episode of TMBS. Thank you. Contagious. Understanding the Schadenfreude in sports helps illuminate the conservative tradition. Mayday Mindy, Michael, I love you, but come on, ragging on Philly, really? Don't you think our fans are tortured enough? Let us bathe in our moment of glory. By the way, Bob Kraft is a Trump asshole buddy, and Brady wore a MAGA hat yesterday in the locker room. And oh yeah, your Philly accent, not so good.
Yesterday he did?
Yeah, I don't know about yesterday. I thought that was a while ago. That was Brendan's, and I thought Brendan's Philly accent was great.
You guys won the World Series less than 10 years ago. Don't talk about being tortured.
Yeah, jeez.
Talk about being tortured.
I mean, I actually really love Philadelphia.
It is a cool city,
as a city?
Yeah.
I haven't been there in a long time. Shockman. Here's hoping that by the time you've read through this, you've thoroughly scrutinized the Trump Juggins droid couple, Cortland Sykes and Channel Ryan. If not, okay, I don't know what this is.
Like Nazis in the Republican Party, basically, I think.
Okay. Alpha Male. Hey, Michael, any chance we can get NOI Obama to read a couple of those yo meme jokes from Twitter? Maybe we'll do that on TMBS. Robert from New Orleans. So when people kneel for the flag, it's disrespectful, but when white people burn Philadelphia, it's celebration. Cool. Anthony Noodles. How worried should we be about Trump firing Mueller and stocking the FBI? With sycophants, it seems like we're one nuclear option and the Senate away from an autocratic government here in the States. Well, I am surprised he's not fired Mueller yet, but it actually...
He has to go get Rosenstein first.
Yeah, it's actually weird because it doesn't seem like...
it seems hard.
Seems hard.
I really want it, but it seems like a lot of work.
It's also funny. It's almost like the Nunes memo has actually... Like, I thought the Republicans were really coalescing around him, but releasing the Nunes memo has kind of snapped back. Like, McCain came out and did his thing, and
you can say whatever,
Trey Gowdy... What do you mean?
And you can say whatever, and like even if like let's say they were to fire Rosenstein, they were to fire Mueller, they're still not going to impeach Trump.
Oh, they're definitely not going to impeach him. This guy's concerned about the opposite thing. He's concerned about are we heading towards authoritarian government?
Actually, Hillary's going to prison.
Hillary's going to jail. I mean, look, I think there's an erosion and accelerated erosion of the institutions. There's no doubt. I still don't. I think we're in a very dangerous and very bad time. Do I think like in the way that is meant for people in a vernacular sense, like Trump is going to be able to say like I'm not calling like 2020 here's martial law? No, I don't think so.
That's for Tom Cotton in 2024.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Thames Darwin. Hey, Michael. Oh, yeah. SCOTUS voted to uphold the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's decision to redistrict immediately before primary. Mo Brains. Hey, Mike. Just like you to say, California majority reporters, check out Gail McLaughlin running for lieutenant governor. She's former mayor of Richmond and endorsed by several of Our Revolution DSA chapters. Cool. They need what they really need is I think the Democratic candidates for governor suck. Big questions about Gavin Newsom and Villaraigosa. Real J World, yeah. She was going to want that Costco executive membership. If you don't even get enough cash back to cover the price gap between plans Costco gives you, typical Republican plan, you have to front the cash. Rich get richer. Almighty. And Dave Rubin will never interview Sam or Michael because he's a beta cuck, but in case he ever grows some balls, you guys should ask him why his videos are ending up on white supremacist websites. I think it's weird that an African-American studies enthusiast like Rubin, who had the same politics as MLK and loves free speech, never challenged Sargon of Akkad in his petition to end ethnic and gender studies when he interviewed him. Oh, that's the least of it. He also had on that disgusting milieu to spread race science, pseudo-race science. Josh from Houston. As a Houstonstonian with no skin in the game, I've been to both Chicago and NYC and had both of their pizzas. My ruling is in favor of Chicago deep dish. Dude,
yeah. Obviously, someone from Houston has a very nuanced understanding of what pizza is.
I'm not even going to finish that because
my favorite tacos are from Baltimore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, please. I find it much better than New York pizza. New York pizza is the worst coal-fired delusion in the country right now.
By the way, Brendan's Baltimore analogy doesn't even work because it's not from Baltimore. The pizza's from Chicago. That's a pizza place. It's not someone from Baltimore. Lou Malnati's.
New York pizza is the worst coal-fired delusion in the country right now, and that includes Trump's promise to the people of West Virginia. Hey, man, I can't force you to have taste. 4-4, this caller doesn't seem to understand the hard sciences where his education and worldview stem from, and the soft sciences, the social sciences, where the term has slightly different but still very relevant definition. The caller doesn't understand the purpose of social sciences, apparently. Ebunara.
I think he was saying maybe, I mean, just to defend the caller, I'm not sure if this is it, but I think maybe the caller was saying that proponents of certain like people think they're doing science when they're not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he was talking about a very specific empirical membership.
Like the claims that IQ scientists make for their field. You know, I think it's worth distinguishing what's the sort of empiricism that's involved there.
Yeah, I agree. Nick from Manitoba, does it concern you that Trudeau clip that the audience ardently cheered Trudeau had the protesters removed? No, not really.
Yeah, that's going to happen in a lot of places that like waste their time to go see a politician speak.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I mean, for what's worse, they were there presumably to hear him talk. Social Jewish Warrior, I wonder how MLK would react to his speeches being played over a Chevy Tahoe ad during last night's Super Bowl. Well, we went into that.
And it was Dodge Ram.
Yeah. Unless you're trying to make like some type of interscene truck warfare joke. Which would be impressive. QAnon. I can understand that MLK rallied against capitalism, but why should we have an issue with them using an MLK sermon? We just explained that. Super Bowl attracts so many right-wing eyes and ears, they were forced to hear the power in the Reverend Doctor's message. I love it. And I will never buy a Dodge Ram. I will buy a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. This hyperventilation and snowflake cuckistry is pathetic. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely, dude, that's how you persuade people. You stick a generic MLK thing in a Rams ad, and then they become members of DSA. Totally. Christo, if you haven't read McLean columnist Tabitha Southey's beautiful takedown as Jordan Peterson, the stupid man, smart person, maybe you should have believed you would enjoy it. I did read it, and I did enjoy it. I thought it was very insightful. And let's see. And the final IM of the day. I see a career path for Gorka since he can identify racist bones in the body. If he can't hire himself out to root out racists from the organization, just imagine having the Gorka no racist bones seal of approval in your business or organization. How could anybody question that? Thanks, everybody. We're back tomorrow. Sam is here. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking